your career ladder has just been yanked out from under you. So you're desperate, you're worried. You will offer yourself one way or another for less money than the person who's in that private sector job now. We cannot accept these injustices, and neither should you.
Richard Wolff asserts that we are now at a level of debt and going into deeper trouble because of what Donald Trump did to our country.
We are now at a level of debt this country has never seen. It's becoming a scary problem because if the rest of the world no longer lends to the United States government to cover its deficits, what are we going to do? Let's remember that for many, many people, you get paid less if you work for the government than if you go in the private sector. And the compensation for that was job security.
Richard Wolff said that what Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing is they've taken that security away from the labor.
What Mr. Trump and Mr. Musk are doing, more than what the workers are that they fire, is they've taken that security away. Where do you think public employees are going to go if either they've lost their job, which is happening to tens of thousands, or they're scared silly that they might lose their job? They're going to go into the private sector. Where else are they going to go? Which means they're going to drive down wages and working conditions in the private sector, because the worker who comes from the private sector, laid off after 5-10 years, that means not only your job is gone, your income is gone, but your career ladder has just been yanked out from under you. So you're desperate, you're worried. You will offer yourself one way or another for less money than the person who's in that private sector job now.
What Donald Trump did to us now used to be called trickle-down economics, where our hope at the top and get the tax cut from them.
It used to be called trickle-down economics. You help the folks at the top, you boost the profits, you give them a tax cut, and it'll trickle down to a good job for me and all that. I'm going to be more nice now than I ought to be. There was a grain of truth to that, but it isn't anymore. And that's perhaps the most important thing that I can tell you. And I'll say it as bluntly as I know how. The American empire is over. We're done. We peaked about 12, 15 years ago, and we are on a down. And it's very hard for the American people, which I understand. I am one. It's hard to get your head around that. We've had a century of on the way up, which is a lot more fun than on the way down. But it does happen to every empire. We're only the latest. Look at the British, how far they've fallen. We're in that process. So the problem with the trickle down is, there might be more jobs, but they're going to be created in China. They're going to be created in Brazil. They're going to be created in India. They're not created here.
Richard Wolff said that this tax cut is based on desperation, and the economy is on the greatest debt level.
This is a cut based on desperation. This is an economy that is indeed, we have the greatest level of corporate debt this country has ever seen, off the chart. The greatest level of personal debt, and we have the greatest level of government debt. Our government debt is now trillions of dollars greater than our annual output. That was not the case in the 20th century. It is the case now. What you're seeing is desperation politics. The whole Trump phenomena ought to say to you, wait a minute, these jerky moves that are out of whack, right? In recent days, we have seen the decision of the Trump administration to kiss the goodbye. We're not doing that no more because we can't afford it. We can't keep funding, which, by the way, the West is losing, as anybody who pays attention knows. All of these things are signs of what? Of a country that is in trouble and is turning on its friends because it can to save itself. We're going to take over, we're going to get your energy for nothing. We're going to, make you build the wall, you in Mexico. Look what the genius in a way of Mr. Trump is that without understanding it, because clearly he doesn't, he feels in his own way, the way lots of people do, that there's something that necessitates going way beyond what has been done because our need as a society is beginning to show up. Look, let me give you a simple example. The best electric vehicles in the world right now, by uniform global agreement, are produced by something called the BYD Corporation, which probably most folks have never heard of, which is Chinese. BYD, the initials, BYD. They make the best quality, cheapest electric car and truck. All right. You don't see them anywhere in the United States. Why not? Because Mr. Trump put a 27% tariff on them, and Mr. Biden raised it to 100%. So let me give you an example. Wow. If you wanted to buy a $30,000 BYD electric vehicle, which you could do, that's what they charge. That's why it's so good. You would have to pay $30,000 to get the Chinese to ship it here. Then you'd have to give another $30,000, 100%, tariff to Uncle Sam, or in this case, Uncle Don, in the way of a tariff. So it would cost you $60,000, which you're not going to do because you can get a less good Tesla or GM or Ford or anybody else at $40,000 to $50,000, which is less than you'd have to pay.
Richard Wolff claims that what we are facing now is a new political party, which is roughly like our demonic party.
I call this one a new political party. And so let me start right in by announcing, if you have not already heard about it, that two of my favorite politicians have decided to form a new political party in the United Kingdom, in Britain. One of them is Jeremy Corbyn, who really is, for England, a pretty close equivalent to Bernie Sanders in the United States. A longtime activist in the Labour Party there, which is roughly like our Democratic Party in the United States. And he has been joined by Zara Sultana, who was a member of the Labour Party, elected to the parliament the way Corbyn had been. So these are two Labour Party activists and leaders breaking away from the Labour Party, which has been what they have done politically most of their lives, because they need, as they have made crystal clear, that we need, quote, a new kind of political party, one that belongs to you. And I want to read the basic statement. The system is rigged when 4.5 million children live in poverty in the 6th richest country in the world, Britain. The system is rigged when giant corporations make a fortune from rising bills. The system is rigged when the government says there is no money for the poor, but billions for the military and the. We cannot accept these injustices, and neither should you. I want to take a moment so that the historical significance of all of this settles in. There is a growing alienation of more and more Americans from the two-party duopoly. That's a monopoly when it's two instead of one, that has been running, or maybe better, ruining the country. Watching them joust over the hideous ugliness of the Epstein affair only deepens the awareness of the corruption of many dimensions that has settled in on both these parties. And I don't mean corruption, although that's part of it. I mean the corruption of dealing with these issues in place of the urgent needs of our time. Inside this economic system are the mechanisms, the relationships which prevent liberty, equality, fraternity, and democracy. Liberty, not in a meaningful sense. Fraternity, don't even imagine it.
Richard Wolff warns that something serious is about to hit America, pointing to capitalism itself as the engine of the coming crisis.
Well, modern capitalism, and let's hold for a moment what the definition is. Modern capitalism in the West comes out of the disintegration of a previous system called feudalism. And whatever we know, more or less, feudalism was a situation which had lords and serfs. The bottom of the society, the mass of people, were serfs on the land. They were serfs because their parents were serfs. They were on the land that their parents had farmed, and they were all part of a community run by someone above them called a lord. One of the reasons we have the word Lord in the Christian religion is it comes out of that period of time. The way to help people understand the Lord in the sky was to project from the Lord that ran the show in your little geographic area.
By the end of the 17th century, this system that had long structured Europe finally disintegrated, collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions.
Well, by the end of the 17th century, this system, which had existed in Europe, particularly for 1,000 years, disintegrated, fell apart. And the question was, what would come next? And there were groups of people who were very passionate about what ought to come next. These are the people who became famous in the French Revolution, which was a kind of culmination of the end of feudalism and the beginning of something different. And that something different was a situation where nobody would be stuck in the land on which they were born, stuck in doing what their parents did. It was a change that was celebrated by the people then as freedom. As important as the word freedom was to get rid of the old systems where people could be property of other people.
Richard asserts that the American Revolution started earlier than people think and shared the same themes of resistance, power, and self-determination.
So the end of feudalism, like the end of, was celebrated as a step for human freedom. Indeed, the champions, both in Western Europe and in the United States, because remember, the French Revolution is 1789. The American Revolution was actually a few years earlier and had many of the same themes in it. Well, the great slogan of the French Revolution was liberty, equality, and fraternity. These are very powerful words, and they were great motivators. Feudalism couldn't survive because it was the opposite of liberty. You weren't free to move. Equality, people would have laughed at that. The Lord lived in the mansion. If you've ever gone to Europe as a tourist, you visit the great chateaus, the great Schlosses in German, the great homes and mansions where the rich lords lived. The mass of people were in no way equal. They didn't have equal income. They didn't have equal standard of living. They didn't have equal political rights. They didn't have equal education. None of it. And so the whole idea was that a new system would be brought in to give people liberty, equality, fraternity, and what the Americans added, democracy. The people should rule, not the lords.
Richard asserts that in a true democracy, it's the people who should rule, not the lords, and that rule must be shared equally by all.
The people should rule, and they should rule equally. Not gradation, not some people more equal than others. What a fantastic idea. And it was the idea that Thomas Jefferson thought was magnificent. And so he kept it. And so did Sam Adams. And so did many of the others who made the American Revolution. And so did Robespierre and Danton and Marat, the great leaders of the French Revolution. Well, why am I telling you this? Because they did usher in a new system. No more lords, no more serfs, no more masters, no more. The new system organized people to produce goods and services, which they always had. But this time, the relationship between them was that of the employer and the employee. Some people would be selling their ability to work, and other people would be buying it. And that was a very different relationship from the serf and the master, or the serf and the lord. And they brought that system in, the new system. You would be free to go wherever you wanted. You could work for any employer who would hire you. And you would be part of this new economic system. They didn't call it capitalism. They didn't know what to call it. So some of them called it freedom. Some of it thought it's the people will finally be in charge. Democracy. Okay, it came at the end of the 18th century. By the middle of the 19th century, 50 years, 75 years later, it was the new system established in Europe. And at that time, Karl Marx reached his adulthood. And so he was living in this new system. He loved the slogans of the French and American revolutions. They were his passion too. Liberty, equality, fraternity, democracy. He was part of the generation that welcomed all of that. They were the generation that included Beethoven and the music he wrote to celebrate all that. The new novelists who talked about what it meant in daily life for people to go through the transition. But here comes Marx's absolutely crucial contribution. He looked around him. He was born in Western Germany, right near the French and German border. So it was already well along the way of capitalism, had overthrown feudalism.
Richard claims that we still haven't achieved liberty, equality, fraternity, or true democracy, because while these ideals are praised in speeches and written into constitutions,
he looked around and he said to himself and to those close to him, we got capitalism, it's a new system. This employer-employee system, it's not feudalism, it's not. But did we achieve liberty, equality, fraternity, democracy? And his answer was a very honest no. No, we haven't. And by the way, he goes to London around the time of Charles Dickens. For those of you who've ever read a Dickens novel, Mr. Dickens was showing us how the following is true. Equality, we don't have. Liberty, not in a meaningful sense. Fraternity, don't even imagine it. We got capitalism, this new system, and Marx was one of the early ones to use that kind of language. We got it, but what was promised to come along with it, we didn't get. And so the question becomes, for Marx, why not? Why didn't we get it? Is it some special circumstance? Is it a bad leader? Is it any one of the details of life in Western Europe in the middle of the 19th century when Marx is doing his work? And Marx reached an answer to that question. And the answer was no, it's not about this or that detail. Inside this economic system are the mechanisms, the relationships which prevent liberty, equality, fraternity, and democracy. Everybody around the world will be looking to build their business outside of the United States, away from the United States. The tariff hurt us. Mr. Trump, trying to solve the problems of America, dumped those problems on us.
Richard Wolff warns that most people have no idea what's about to happen with Trump's tariffs, a fallout that will blindside the public.
We're gonna get screwed by the tariffs in the form of the higher prices. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying to you. This is very important. But there is, of course, damage that is done to the foreigner from whom we import whatever it is the companies are bringing in. Why? Because they understand that if the American importing company is successfully able to jack up the price at retail so they don't have to pay, we have to pay, we're going to buy less of those things because for us the price has gone up.
What hurts other countries is the loss of sales in the United States caused by tariffs, cutting off markets they depend on to survive.
So what is going to be hurtful to China or Canada or Mexico or any other country that sends stuff here, from whom we in America import, what hurts them is the loss of sales in the United States, as the tariff, by raising the price, being inflationary, costs sales. We buy fewer of what the tariff has made more expensive for us. Well, then what will the foreign companies in China, in Brazil, in Canada, in Mexico, what will they do if they suffer reduced sales in the United States? Here we go. Let's take a look. Because we know. We have the statistics and the research to tell us. Here's the first thing.
Foreign producers are suddenly discovering they're losing sales in the United States because of Mr. Trump's tariffs, watching their access to the world's biggest market shrink overnight.
Foreign producers suddenly discovering that they're losing sales in the United States because of Mr. Trump's tariffs will be working much harder than they used to replace the lost sales in the United States by increasing their sales everywhere else. They will spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of manpower and womanpower to find other markets outside the United States. They'll establish distributors over there. They'll develop an advertising program over there. They might be lucky, and this is what they'll be striving for, to make new additional sales abroad over and beyond the sales they lose here. Long story short, everybody around the world will be looking to build their business outside of the United States, away from the United States. Is that something we want? Is that good for us? I don't think so. But we are not even at the beginning yet. Suppose the companies over there decide that the way to offset lost sales in the US because of the tariff, they're going to try to sell more of their goods inside their own countries. Not export elsewhere, but inside. And what are they going to do for advertising to their own people? Well, they're going to do something that will likely be also part of their advertising in all the other countries they're going to try to develop sales in. They've got to come up with a pitch. And you know what they're going to think of? Guaranteed, it's already happening. They're going to use Mr. Trump to help them. They're going to say to their own people and to everywhere they advertise, you want to strike against Mr. Trump for causing all the difficulty? You want to have a little way to do that? Does it bother you? Buy our stuff. Don't buy American stuff. Don't buy any American stuff. Buy from us. Buy this. It not only gets you this, whatever it is we produce, but it lets you do and make a statement about Mr. Trump and what you think of him. And now let's take it one step further.
Every political leader in every country will unleash a new wave of government messaging, an advertising crusade built on anti-American themes.
Every political leader of every country, communist country, capitalist country, Europe, Asian, African, Latin American, it doesn't matter. In every country, friend or foe, you're going to see a new advertising thematic take over from the government, not the advertising from the companies, which will be anti-American because of their feelings about all this. But now the government has something that Mr. Trump gave them on a silver platter, an excuse. You're having difficulties in your country there in Africa? You're having difficulties in your country in Latin America or Europe or Asia? Blame the Americans. The tariff hurt us. Mr. Trump, trying to solve the problems of America, dumped those problems on us. Don't be angry at me, your president, your leader, your prime minister. No. You should support me because I'm anti-American. And they deserve it because they brought this problem onto us. Their difficulty, they've made it to ours. And let's pay them back. Mr. Trump doesn't tell you about any of that. Like a huckster, like a cheap advertising agent, he tells us as the people what good things a tariff might do.
Trump tells the people about the supposed good a tariff might bring, while carefully avoiding any mention of the heavy costs and hidden damage it leaves behind.
And he's careful never to mention, hiding all the time, all the bad things, and I've just given you a handful of them. There are more. Well, that's a kind of lying. If you know that something has its good sides and its bad sides, and you're talking to another person about it, and you only tell them about the good side, that's a kind of lying. And that's what's going on here. Tariffs have been sold to you with an immense set of layered lies, particularly lies of omission, where the truth of where tariffs go, how they work, where they lead, what they can cause, is carefully left out. And yet we're supposed to support the tariff program, even though we haven't been told the half of the truth of what it's doing. And if I had to summarize what it's doing, it's isolating the United States. That's what's happening. The whole world is looking at the United States as an out-of-control country that no longer interacts with other countries to sit down, talk about problems, and figure out a solution that is the best option. No. It decides all by itself, with no discussion whatsoever. I'm going to hit you with a tariff, and we're going to hit you with a higher tariff, and you better not replicate the tariff because we'll hit you harder. Whoa. We're going to take Canada. We're going to take Greenland. What is this? We're going to take Washington, D.C. We're watching a disintegration of the way the world works. And every country knows where the problem starts.